What's up, gang? How's it going? I forgot I put my seat down for the news. There we go. That's better. How is everybody? Happy Wednesday. It is a beautiful, not so beautiful, cloudy, rainy thunderstorm in Miami today, as it normally is during these summer days. But I'll tell you what, I'm trying to just have gratitude no matter what the weather is. So we'll take the thunderstorms and the rain for what it is. I, for one, am super grateful today because I don't know if you guys knew this or noticed, but yesterday we hit an all-time high live streaming record on Rumble, which, if you don't know much about Rumble, is kind of a difficult place to be picked up in the algorithm because there's not like a same type of algorithm like YouTube or Facebook or whatever. So we made it on the trending page yesterday, thanks to all of you guys watching on Rumble, sharing this, hitting that like button, and making sure other people knew we were out there. And is it Thursday? Sorry, that's really embarrassing. Yeah, thanks, Nintendo fan. It is Thursday. This is just where I'm at. This week has been literally so long. I wish it was Friday. I thought it was Wednesday. It is, in fact, classic Thursday vibes. That's really embarrassing. Wow. Okay, let's just ignore that Isabel did that. Anyway, over on Rumble, we got picked up. We were on the trending page because you guys were hitting that like button and sharing it with people. So we actually had over 2,000 live viewers on Rumble yesterday, which is absolutely crazy. We've never had anything close to that on Rumble before. Usually we get up into those numbers in Getter with our amazing Getter gang over there, but not as always often on Rumble. So thank you guys on Rumble for everything you were doing to help share our stream yesterday and help get us out there. We love that so very much. And love you guys. Church, I know I am so unprofessional. LOL. That's the whole point of this stream, is that it's not supposed to be the most professional vibe. We're all just hanging out talking to each other, which is a much better way to learn everything important that you need to know. If you guys are jumping in, don't forget to introduce yourself and say hi to us over in the live chat. It is super fun for us to get to know you and learn more about where you guys are watching from. I saw we have a new viewer over on Facebook watching from Sweden, which is super cool. And especially when you guys are watching from other countries, it makes my day knowing that all of the cultural issues that we are dealing with in the United States right now are not localized to the US of A, but instead are cultural issues that the entire world is facing as our world continues rejecting objective truth and embracing lies as truth. So thank you guys all for being here. As we're getting started and as we say hi to some people, please do me a huge favor and smash that follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you're watching on right now. We are currently live on YouTube, Facebook, Rumble, Getter, and Locals. This is a totally independent stream. I am in the spare bedroom of my house. I forgot to close the shade over there so you can see the reflection of me in my little janky setup in the back, but we do what we can to bring grassroots and important, authentic, non-scripted conversations to our generation that really desperately needs to hear it most, and all of that is spread throughout the metaverse thanks to you guys and your commitment to supporting me and all of my content. So thank you from the bottom of my heart for helping through that process. All right, let's say hi to some people before we jump in. And as we do that, I do just want to give you a little overview for what we are going to be talking about today. I was on Fox News again this morning. I am about once a week these days talking about issues mainly for the 2024 election pertaining to Gen Z. And we talked a little bit about student loans this morning, so I think we might end up streaming about that probably on Monday, just as more information keeps unfolding and keeps coming out into the light about this new plan that the Biden administration has to forgive student loans. I think it's a really crappy plan, to be totally transparent with you, and doesn't make a lot of financial sense, but we're going to talk about that later. But as I've been on the news a lot lately, I've been reinforced this narrative and this idea, this attitude that I think far too many people have towards Generation Z in America. I am a Gen Zer. I'm the first year of Gen Z. I was born in 1997, so I'm 26, the oldest of us. And I have two younger siblings, obviously spend a lot of time with Gen Z on college campuses and high school campuses doing what I do for a job, and often am tasked with speaking about our generation in the political realm and in the political sense, but also here culturally on the live stream as well every single day. And I've come to find that older generations in particular have this unbelievably distorted, negative view of our generation that is not based in truth or reality really whatsoever. They see one video that went viral on TikTok and then makes its way onto CNN or MSNBC or Fox News. They read one poll that was really weirdly conducted on college campuses, or see some random news headline that might be true for like 5 people, but certainly is not true for the majority of our generation. And we've clearly made up our minds as a country and as a society that my generation is to be written off. We don't have any reason to have hope for Gen Z. Gen Z is stupid. Gen Z is destroying America. They're so leftist and they hate truth and they just want to burn the whole system to the ground. And I think there's a lot to be said that what you are being told about Gen Z, if you are not a Gen Zer watching this stream, or even if you are, and this might benefit your parents or your grandparents in future conversations that you have about our unique generation, is totally different from reality. So today we're going to be unpacking some really positive and optimistic reasons to have hope in Gen Z, some things that you might not even realize, but that we as a generation are doing to chart our own course and break free from the brokenness, the division, and the lies of our current culture that we didn't institute, but we certainly have been raised with and are trying to break that cycle for ourselves as we come into adulthood and every generation that comes after us. Really excited to share that with you guys today and say hi to everybody in our live chat. As I'm jumping over to the chat, which by the way, we are working on showing here on the screen at some point. I got to figure out the best way to do that because you guys are in like literally so many different places, but we do want to put the chat on the screen in the future so that you guys can all see what each other are saying. If you didn't notice, we have a new sponsor for the stream today with our amazing friends over at Nori, which is a supplement and wellness company that also is pro-life, pro-freedom, pro-America. We absolutely love Nori, and they are plugged into the Public Square ecosystem as well, which is how I originally connected with them. Here is their website, and I just want to share a little bit about what they do with you guys so that you have an opportunity to get to know them. Nori is a wellness and supplement company, as I mentioned, and they create really incredible products to help both men, women, and also children have unbelievably great microbiome health. We've talked a lot about cleaning out the toxins in our house and all of the products that you're using with your makeup and your skincare, but a lot of that also has to do with clearing out the toxins that are present in your gut, because your gut is the most important thing when it comes to setting the tone for the rest of your health. I'm so excited to be working with Nori. They are delivering the highest quality and most accessible microbiome solutions on the market. I, for one, really love their women's health probiotic, and I will pull up their women's products because I think they're absolutely phenomenal, as well as their Stay Well signature product. If you've never heard of that before, it's like an antibody booster and immunity booster that I take all the time when I am traveling. You can do it as lemonade. You can do it as like a passion fruit drink. They have all kinds of different stuff. They have women's health probiotics, digestive health probiotics, support for menopause and prenatal vitamins, and all of the above. They're absolutely phenomenal, but definitely recommend the Stay Well product, which I use all the time while I am traveling on the road and always on airplanes and everything. I'm dropping the link right now in our live chat for how you guys can check out Nori. Could not recommend them enough. African Warlord wants to know if it is good for doggos. I have a different little note to share with you on that tomorrow, African Warlord, so don't you worry. And they gave me a discount code for you guys to be purchasing any of their products. Just use my name, Isabel, and then 20. I will drop that in the live chat as well, and that is a great way that you can get 20% off your order over at Nori, as you guys are looking for great ways to support your own health in the future. All right, let's say hi to everybody and make sure we're all saying hello to one another in the live chat as we kick things off today over on YouTube. Abby was our first in our YouTube chat. Hello, Abby. And you said, yay, I'm finally on time to a live. We love to see you there and very glad that you're here in the chat. Nintendo fan is watching. Jake is here. G-Fact's watching. On Facebook, we've got Emil watching in Sweden. Danny is watching. Jay is watching in Minnesota on Facebook. Back over on YouTube, Los Ravosa and Brenda are here. Fredster is watching. King David says, viewing from California, send help, LMAO. May the power of Christ compel you. King David, we love to see it. Church and Marnus are here. We've got Doomsday Library. I love that handle. Very fun. On YouTube, Edward's watching from India. Super cool. You might be our farthest away today, unless we've got our Australian and New Zealanders here on the chat. Darth is watching. and many, many more. You guys are the best over on Rumble. Emerson is first in our chat. You did great yesterday. Congratulations. Thank you so much, Emerson. You guys really were able to blow up the stream and get us on the trending page very, very earlier. So appreciate all of your guys' hard work so very much yesterday. It was awesome. Anase is watching. Nitty Witty is here on Getter. Janice is in the Getter chat, and Locals is the whole gang. Johnny Diamond, Mountain Lover, African Warlord, Magic Def, Alex Padron, AJ. I love seeing all you guys on here. You are the absolute best. Yes, Alex, you said that the Rumble video has over 60,000 views. I actually think that it's over 120,000 views from our stream yesterday now, which is absolutely insane. Very, very grateful for all of you guys. Okay. So let's just jump right in. As I mentioned to you guys, we ended up having a really interesting conversation on Fox News this morning about student loans, and we'll try to cover that next week as it pertains to Gen Z voting behaviors in 2024 and what I anticipate is probably going to happen with our generation. But the segment right after me this morning on Fox News was also about Gen Z, and it specifically was about our generation developing a phobia of phone calls, like afraid to talk to people on the phone because we spend so much time texting or DMing or going back and forth in emails that very few people our age actually like to pick up the phone and call someone. I will be the first to admit I do not prefer to call people, even though I have no anxiety about calling people on the phone. It just feels like really weird to call people on the phone when you could just send them a text, or you could go out of your way to send them a DM or an email or something like that. Most of the time you can accomplish the same conversation in about 2 seconds that would take about 20 minutes on the phone. So I personally prefer phone calls. It's not because I have like a phobia of it or I'm really anxious about it. Read my fiance, who like literally cannot talk on the phone to anybody. He gets like really embarrassed about it. My sister, who's so sweet, she's a junior in college, cannot call the pizza place to like place an order for pizza. She has to do it on the computer and on their website. It is just like not a common value for people our age to actually talk on the phone. And I don't know that for everyone is about anxiety, but I do think for some people it is. So they were talking about Gen Z being super anxious about jumping on the phone, and the way that they were phrasing it made it seem like Gen Z was this really emotionally stunted, very unhealthy, stupid, uneducated generation. And that, generally speaking, is the attitude that I see pertaining toward my generation all the time on cable television. I appear on cable television quite regularly. I've kind of taken a step back from it these last few months because we are really focusing on the live stream and my independent content. But I used to go on the news literally almost every single day, like 5-6 days a week, most regularly on Newsmax. But I've also spent quite a significant amount of time on Fox News, on OAN. I have yet to make my CNN debut, but I am trying to work on that. News Nation. I've been on like a zillion others. Bold TV. I do a lot of TV. Lots of international news with Sky News, closer towards election seasons in Sky News Arabia, Sky News UK. I have yet to really do a lot with Sky News Australia, but I think I did do one hit with them once. So I used to do TV all the time, and almost universally, the television industry, largely because their viewership demographic is baby boomers and Gen Xers, so people our grandparents and parents' age, rather than Gen Zers ourselves, have this unilateral view of my generation that we are stupid, that we are lazy, that we are unhealthy, that we are uneducated, which is just objectively not true. We are the most educated generation of all time. We might be miseducated, but we're not uneducated. And I find a lot of their claims feel like fear-mongering and feel like trying to get you to follow a narrative about young people that's intended to scare you, even when it's not based in objective reality. And we see most of this really ramp up and become extremely inflammatory and extremely hyperbolic closer towards election seasons. Obviously, we saw a lot of that last November for the midterm elections in 2022. I think we're starting to see a lot of that pertaining to the 2024 election for Gen Z right now. But it's the same tactic that they often used about the pandemic the last several years. It's the same tactic that we often see about political figures and the legislation that they are putting forward in Washington, D.C., like pretty much across the board. It's the fear tactic and the need for ratings and trying to divide people and saying really hyperbolic crazy things, not just about Gen Z, but across the board. And I think we can all agree they say this about everything across the board, not just this issue. So if we think that they're fear-mongering and not providing the whole truth and just sound bites and snippets on some things, then naturally it would follow through that they're doing the same on this topic too. And so if you are coming from a place where you might think, Gen Z is so stupid, I don't agree with anything they say, I don't agree with anything they do, I don't agree with anything they believe. First of all, we're not a monolith. We're a group of 70 million people in the United States who are dramatically independent thinkers and independent from one another. So I would encourage you not to think of us as a monolith, but I also want you to go into this live stream and this conversation with a really open mind, with an open heart and a challenge to your own perspective if you think that Gen Z is lazy, entitled, miserable, angry, unhealthy, wanting to burn down the entirety of society. Because in reality, I believe there's no reason to have anything but hope for our generation as we courageously chart our own course, provide our own path, pioneer our own direction to success, rather than just blindly following the institutions who tell us exactly what to think, how to act, how to behave, and what's going to make us successful, like the mainstream media. So, for example, here was this story that was covered by Fox News in the segment after mine this morning, that Gen Z has this phobia of phone calls, that 90% of Gen Zers fear talking on the phone. Again, I don't know that a lot of it has to do with fearing talking on the phone. If you read the literal first sentence of the article, instead of the chyron that's at the bottom of the news hit here, the news hit on the television would say 90% of Gen Zers fear talking on the phone. But what the study actually tells you is that 9 out of 10 members of Gen Z would rather text than talk on the phone, with some describing phone calls as a phobia of theirs. Most people probably agreeing with me in my perspective that you can just get a lot more done when you're texting someone or when you're sending them an email rather than spending 20, 30 minutes on a phone call that really didn't need to happen. Rather than the choice to text over having phone conversations being one of convenience, they're disagreeing with me. The new data has indicated that it may be a choice born out of anxiety, with only some teenagers, not even all of Gen Z, telling experts that having an awkward phone call is one of the top 3 things that they would want to avoid in life. I mean, can you really blame them for wanting to avoid an awkward phone call? And I see statistics like this all the time, that Gen Z is overwhelmingly leftist. We're really not, if you look at the actual data and the actual information about that. That Gen Z is overwhelmingly pro-abortion. Gen Z is actually trending more pro-life over time, which I find really, really interesting. That Gen Z loves hookup culture and Gen Z is obsessed with their dating apps, when in reality, we're deleting the dating apps off of our phone and we're having record low rates of teenage sex compared to the last 3 decades, 30 years or so, when our parents were our age, and we are much more interested in pursuing our own self-care, our mental health, our social health, our physical health, than just dating to date, dating for the sake of dating. We are actively taking ourselves off the dating market, which again, isn't necessarily the best thing either, but certainly is not this rampant hookup culture and degeneracy that the mainstream media would like you to believe Generation Z is buying into and leading. So there's a few stories that I thought were really interesting that I pulled that I wanted to break down and talk about on the stream today, because there is a litany and a plethora of reasons to have faith in our generation. We've talked a lot about them here on the stream in so many different capacities. Gen Z is enrolling in 4-year university programs at record low rates because we don't see the benefit to spending $250,000 in tuition to get a degree in underwater lesbian basket weaving that there's no job for in the job market, especially in a post-COVID America where academia really has become about Zoom classes and just nodding with each other and agreeing rather than actually learning something and challenging your own perspectives. 62% of Gen Zers already have or are in the process of starting our own businesses, instead of going through the stupid, pointless corporate ladder system in America where you have to prove your loyalty to your employer for 40 or 50 years of your life to maybe, just maybe, cash out at a C-level employee position as the COO or the CFO or the CEO of a company after you were the intern and then the admin and then the grunt worker and then maybe you became a manager for 40 years of your life. We are skipping all the way to the end of that trajectory and just starting our own businesses at 18, 19, 20, 21 years old ourselves as CEO on day one. As I mentioned, we are deleting our dating apps en masse. We don't like them. We think that hookup culture is really stupid and certainly doesn't provide any huge benefit to our lives. And we are actually taking ourselves off the dating market almost entirely. The majority of us are in our generation. Pew Research found that more than 50% of Gen Zers just aren't dating at all, which I believe is really sad and something that we should be fixing, but they certainly aren't engaging in dating apps or rampant hookup culture the way that millennials often were at an increasingly statistical rate. And really just generally across the board, Gen Z is refusing to buy into society's prescribed boxes for what is going to make us successful. I think historically, especially since the 1950s in America, we've really gone out of our way to create this white picket fence, perfect house image of what the American dream is supposed to look like, where you go to a 4-year university and you spend a lot of money and you take out loans to make sure that you can do that, because the piece of paper that you walk out with on the other side is liquid gold. That is going to be your one-way ticket to success in America. And then you take that piece of paper to your first employer and you stay with that first employer for 30, 40, 50 years of your life to prove your loyalty with a 3% raise maybe every year that barely keeps up with inflation. You have a bunch of kids and you send them through the public school system because you picked the right neighborhood to send them through the public school system. And then you retire at 65 or 70 with probably barely enough money saved up for retirement, likely banking on Social Security that we are never going to see anyway. It's already going to be bankrupt by the time we're that old, so that we can then go on vacation. We can then enjoy time with our families. We can then fall back in love with our spouse or our partner who we married 40 years prior, but never really spent any time with because we were always chained to our cubicle in the American corporate system. And that was really sold to several generations, really baby boomers, Gen X, millennials, and us, as the perfect bow on top, all wrapped up, ideal American lifestyle, an ideal way to live. But in reality, that could not be further from the truth. It created unbelievable amounts of burnout. We have a really struggling economy as a result of all of that because it all shut down as soon as one bad thing happened with the pandemic. People don't really have this sense of purpose. We've lost our faith in God as a society with record high rates of atheism in society today. We have record high divorce rates and record low marriage rates because of how poorly we were setting up marriages for those who came right before us. And just ultimately, I find it really, really interesting that this bill of goods that we've sold to several generations in a row all of a sudden is being rejected by our generation because we're looking around at our grandparents and our parents and our older cousins or older siblings or older neighbors and friends from growing up, and we're realizing that all of them are miserable, that literally everyone is miserable. They aren't making enough money to keep up with inflation. They're chained to a cubicle or to a desk at least 40, if not more, hours a week. They have really struggling relationships with their spouses and with their kids and with their parents. They might, if they're lucky, get to go on one vacation a year, and they might, if they're lucky, have 2 weeks of vacation time. It's really difficult for them to start families, and they're buying into the lie where they shouldn't have families at all. Hey, Rumble Rick, so glad you're over there on Rumble. We love to see you, and hopefully some more people jump into our chat over there as well. And GFact really points it out well on our YouTube chat. The Bible speaks about all of this stuff, so we can't be surprised like this. Yeah, correct. Like, this is all very biblical prophecy that I think we've all bought into, that we are worshiping our jobs. We are worshiping our TVs, our boxes in our living rooms at the end of the day. We are worshiping our politicians, and we're really worshiping ourselves far more than we are worshiping God. And it's brought our society way off track for the last several generations. So us, age 26 all the way down to 12, are looking around at everybody older than us who claims to have all the answers about what it's going to take to be successful, about how you can make money, about what you need to do to have society think highly of you and highly regard you. And we're all thinking, I don't know about that. I don't think that that's really true. And I think our society really needs a hard reset. Maybe nowhere else is that showing up with the same clarity with Gen Z as it is in the political world. And I find it absolutely fascinating that we specifically are rejecting the two boxes that America says we have to fit in order to have a political identity or activism in our political system. 52% of my generation, when they are registering to vote for the first time, are registering to vote as independents. We are fed up with being prescribed only the RNC or only the DNC as the solutions to the problems that our country is facing. We are particularly fed up with politicians who are more than twice our age, have been in Washington, D.C., not even their age, have been in Washington, D.C. for longer than twice the time that we've been alive, like the Nancy Pelosi's and Chuck Schumer's and Joe Biden's and Mitch McConnell's of the world, in which none of those people have ever solved any of the things that they promised to when they ran for office the first time. Remember what we've said all week on the stream? If they solve the problems, if they actually finished their promises that they made on the campaign trail, they would run out of reasons to keep running for office. They would be out of a job, right? Because the problem would be gone. And we're seeing this cycle and we're wanting to break it. So we are registering very, very overwhelming as independent. The shadow band over on Rumble says you have to register in a party to be able to vote in a primary. I am registered for a party because of that reason, but honestly, I identify as a lot more politically independent than identifying 100% with the RNC. And I think generally speaking, that's a generational difference for the average Gen Z conservative who feels really disenfranchised from the party of either the Republican Party or the Democrat Party. We're tired of that eventually turning into a uniparty in Washington, D.C. on Capitol Hill especially, and we're looking for new generational leadership, an entire new generation of leadership that isn't coming from those older than us, even though they promise to over and over and over and over and over again. So we're looking for a new independent lifestyle, and that's showing up in a ton of different ways. Outside of politics, I think throughout all of COVID, we saw a ton of Gen Zers who got kicked out of college because they wouldn't, or they decided to just go to college online and they didn't want to deal with all the stuff being chained to their dorm room. Everybody started living out of vans and building really cool homes and tiny homes in their vans and traveling to all of the national parks. Wellness and personal physical health has been a huge priority, especially on social media of our generation. Growing our own food and taking advantage of the responsibility to figure out what we are putting in our bodies with supplements like nori, and understanding what's missing from the traditional American diet, deleting our dating apps and looking for a sense of purpose again in our dating and intimate relationships, and just overall looking for purpose and meaning in a society that's rejecting purpose and meaning altogether. Arguably, the only way to have purpose in America today and in modern American culture is to be a corporate wage slave, kind of, which is really sad. And I hate that the American dream, which was intended to be this anything you possibly dream can come into fruition, anything you can set your mind to can be accomplished if you're willing to work really hard, has all of a sudden turned into you have to do what everybody else is doing or else, which is the very opposite of what the American dream was supposed to be. So I wanted to share some stories with you, 4 stories in particular, that Gen Z is seeking bigger and greater purpose and meaning than what our very shallow, materialistic, self-obsessed culture has to offer to us in America, and why there's a lot of reasons to have hope and to have faith in the next generation coming into the next generation of adulthood. So put those preconceived notions aside. Be willing to just have your perspectives challenged a little bit, because what you have heard may not be the entire truth. First and foremost, Gen Z is overwhelmingly redefining wellness, which I find very interesting, especially as we're understanding that the healthcare system is very little about making us healthy, but instead about creating repeat customers and selling us on pharmaceuticals. wellness has become a huge trend for Gen Z, specifically on social media. And wellness culture, like wellness influencers, are a huge thing, in particular on TikTok. If you haven't spent a lot of time watching those videos over there about exercise, about diet, about the right supplements, about getting outside and making sure you're getting enough sunshine every single day, as well as mental, spiritual, and social health and wellness as well. Obviously, it goes without saying that lockdowns, work from home mandates, and travel restrictions in some places still continues to impact our mental health in an unbelievably devastating way. Arguably, we have the single biggest mental health crisis for a generation that the world has ever seen, and we've talked about that a lot on the stream in the past. But I do think it's really interesting that our generation has been the generation to open the dialogue about wellness, to say out loud, we are really struggling with our mental health. There's something wrong with how we are doing culture, locking us all up and putting us behind screens all day and isolating us from our peers and our family members and our friends is not healthy and is not going to be okay for us. And we're not afraid to ask for help and resources when we are needing it. It's okay to say when we are not okay. And as silly and wishy-washy and like, oh, that's so emotionally driven, I think a lot of older generations look at for our generation, I find a lot of pride that we're able to look around at our broken culture. We are able to look around at being stuck behind a screen for the last several years for everything, for our intimacy through pornography, for our dating through dating apps, for our school through Zoom, and our jobs through Zoom, and how we shop. Nobody goes to the mall anymore. You just order everything on Amazon and it'll get there in an hour. We had freaking Zoom Thanksgivings and Zoom funerals, okay, over the last several years. I love that our generation has the guts and has the courage to say there is something fundamentally broken about that. I am not happy. You are not happy. We're basically all wanting to unalive ourselves. I have to be careful about how we say that, especially on YouTube, but we're basically all wanting to unalive ourselves, and there has to be something bigger to our culture than that. As silly as you think mental health culture might be, I think that that's really inspiring and very, very cool. So 3 takeaways that this group did from a Gen Z wellness study is that we as a generation are saying physical health is made up of more than just exercise and nutrition. And I think that that's very, very true. Exercise and nutrition matters, and exercise and nutrition is obviously the baseline for physical health. But as mobile technology has taken off and the global pandemic obviously changed absolutely everything about how we interact for one another, physical health has to be more than just a healthy diet and an active routine. Getting enough sleep, which by the way, the average person in America never hits. For women, you're supposed to be getting on average at least 8 hours of sleep a night. I certainly have been trying to lean more into my sleep health and my downtime instead of embracing this constant like hustle, you'll sleep when you're dead culture that I totally bought into in college and in the first few years of my professional life. Sexual behavior is a huge part of your physical health, might be why teenagers are having staggeringly lower rates of premarital and teenage sex than our parents did at the same age. Diet and nutrition, all part of the picture of physical health for Generation Z. And obviously, I might disagree with where some people might say that your gender identity is the huge part of that as well. Arguably, your gender identity should be a huge part of your physical health by honoring the body that you were born in. But sleep, embracing relationship and community with other people, tangibly touching other people, has massive implications on your physical health rather than being stuck behind a screen. That's more than exercise and diet and nutrition. Going outside and getting enough sunlight and physically grounding yourself to the earth to literally recharge your body like a battery is a huge part of physical health that goes beyond exercise and nutrition. So I think it's really cool that we're looking at that as a more wholesome perspective as a generation. The study also found that mental health requires vigilance for overall equilibrium. We as a generation are really, really in touch with our emotions, and most people look at that as a really bad thing. I think it is an unbelievably effective tool to get society and get humanity back in touch with objective truth again. Because when you hear something that is the truth, we like to say that it has a ring to it. You know intimately with your emotions and with every fiber of your being that what you are hearing is a lie and what you are hearing is truth. Truth has a ring to it. And so when we are in touch with our emotions and we can find that shared sense of humanity and compassion for one another, that's how we are actually able to build a better world and find policies to build a better world in the future. If we had legitimate compassion for one another, the abortion industry would disappear tomorrow. If we had legitimate compassion for one another, no child would be experiencing genital mutilation surgery and being fed hormones by adults who really don't care about them. If we really had compassion for one another, we would be encouraging active physical activity and proper nutrition and running the hell away from lab-grown meat and the whole litany of propaganda that the powers that be want us to believe is good and compassionate. But when we've strayed away from our emotions and pretended like they were a really bad thing, people with the wrong intentions and the wrong agenda have manipulated feelings and emotions to lead us to the wrong solutions. I say all the time, especially when we're speaking about the abortion issue, that the entire concept of facts don't care about your feelings worked really, really, really well for millennials. They were very much a generation statistically, and no offense if you are a millennial watching this, who kind of needed to be like beat over the head with this fact to say over and over and over again, it doesn't matter how you feel about it, this is objective truth. Gen Z is an overwhelmingly feelings-oriented generation. Our emotions and our sense of connection and empathy with one another is how we form our values and our outlook on the world. And that doesn't have to be a bad thing. That can be a really beautiful thing, because the same way that you might communicate a baby in the womb is a human being, it is murder to kill that baby, and you are a murderer if you get an abortion, you can convey the same end result by saying, I totally hear your concern for this woman experiencing an unprecedented crisis in her life, especially if she is a victim of other trauma like incest, like SA, etc. I too share that same empathy and concern, so I would never want to put her through a procedure and an industry that only adds more trauma to her situation. Because I care about this woman, I don't want her to have an increased risk of anxiety, of depression, of unaliving herself. I don't want her to risk her own physical life and maybe die in the process of obtaining an abortion, and I certainly feel a whole sense of compassion for this unborn child who deserves the opportunity to be born and experience the same right to life that we all do, because I care about human rights. Do you see how that gets to the same end result but came about in two totally different ways of communicating those issues? It's the facts versus feeling aspect of all of that, but embracing emotions does not have to be a weak thing. It does not have to be an embarrassing thing. It doesn't have to be a leftist thing. It can be a really powerful way to reignite that sense of shared humanity and that sense of empathy for one another, to explain why our ideas are just better. Our solutions are just better. Our solutions are the only ones that have worked to lift people out of poverty, to promote actual human rights, to ensure that your rights are not given to you by the government, but are given to you by God, and the government shouldn't be infringing upon them, etc. So this study found that Gen Z is really in touch with our emotions. We believe that mental health is a holistic state of well-being that grows from the inside out, and we recognize that if we don't take care of it, that neglect will emerge externally in physical and behavioral ways. I don't know if you guys knew this, but your mental health does have a direct link with your physical health, and you are much more likely to get sick, to have a weakened immune system, to get cancer later on down in life, all kinds of stuff, if you regularly are struggling with mental health issues as well. They are especially concerned about stress and anxiety, especially in our constant me, and always have to keep moving world, and access to mental health care. We as a generation, this study found, believes that social wellness may be a new concept, but it's an ancient human need, that health can't just be about me, it has to be about my community as well, which I think is really beautiful. It encompasses servant leadership and taking care of not just ourselves within narcissistic and self-obsessed culture, but with other people as well, and the people that we care about around us. We are natural supporters in problem situations, showing a talent for follow-through that may be enabled by the ease of technology. I totally believe that. There is such an argument to be made that we are a feelings generation, because with the push of a single button, I can be connected to any human being on the face of the planet in a moment of like instant milliseconds, to any person on any continent. I mean, think of how many of you guys are watching from other countries right now. We have all over Europe. We've got South America and Central America. I know we have a lot of people who watch from Africa pretty regularly. Asia, we have somebody from India watching right now. The sense that we are all connected in real time watching this live stream blows my mind and is so cool because I care about you and your well-being no matter who you are and no matter where you're watching from. So I hope that you have access to social health and taking care of one another because you are a part of my community, even if you happen to live in India or the Netherlands or Australia or anywhere in Africa or any of the above, which I think is really, really cool. They place a premium on honesty and civility. I'm going to come back to that in just a second. And it appears those ever-present phones aren't actually keeping them from the real world. They are connecting them to it. Honesty and civility are two very interesting words that this study decided to use. GFACT, thank you so much for your donation in our super chat. I really appreciate it. Honesty and civility are fascinating words of choice. The diction there blows my mind. See, I remember my high school AP English, okay? Good memory. Not really. I have a really shitty memory. It's actually really, really bad. I'm working on it though. But honesty and civility are generational traits no matter where you fall on a political spectrum, no matter where you fall on the religious spectrum in America, that I believe pertain far more to Gen Z than anyone else who came before us. The reason I started doing this live stream and the reason I started doing my own independent content is A, I didn't see enough authenticity, aka honesty, about who people were, about what they believed in and where they were coming from in American content. And B, I certainly didn't see enough civility in how we communicated these ideas. We became a lot more obsessed in the conservative movement, if you will, or conservative Inc., with like owning the libs through 15-second viral videos on Twitter and convincing ourselves that 1 million followers on Twitter was somehow going to break the scale of changing minds all over America, instead of having an honest conversation and reaching out with empathy and joy and happiness, even if people are going to attack you, on TikTok or in a live stream in an authentic real-time way where we ask people questions and we go back and forth. People weren't going on podcasts for people that they disagreed with, and they weren't inviting people who disagreed with them onto their shows and their platforms. And that sense of civility was so missing that I was looking in real time at my generation, growing this increased level of disdain and anger and frustration with the right of center movement in America. I would argue not even necessarily conservative, but anything right of center. Everybody was hated because they were all so obsessed with shutting everybody down and owning them and winning in a debate, when a debate really wasn't what we needed as a society and as a culture. A conversation was. Church, yes, confirmed. I'm working on it. Okay, it's my biggest temptation in life. We're working on it. So I love that honesty and civility have been a bigger part of our generation's story, that we believe a key component to how healthy our society is starts with our ability to tell the truth to one another, to be authentic with one another, to be willing to show up on a live stream with gross hair and a broken out face and being really stressed out, but still being willing to tell the truth without a script, without a teleprompter, without anybody telling you what to say, but also in a really kind and open-hearted and exciting, civil way. So that has to do with how we're embracing wellness in an interesting turn of events on our relationship health side of things. The New York Post published this just before my birthday in May, that Gen Z is actually also projected to have better marriages than the generations who came before us, which I think is absolutely fascinating. I talk a lot about marriage. Obviously, I'm engaged. I'm getting married to my absolute best friend and the love of my life. And you guys hear me talk about Broccoli, the man, the myth, the legend himself, all the time, almost every day. And I love that I'm getting married. I have found that it is not the norm. Getting married is certainly not the most common thing for our generation, at least the oldest of us that are just now starting to think about getting married right now, because marriage rates are at an all-time low in America since we began recording them in 1867. People are encouraged to go after their career, to date as many people as possible, to not date at all because your self-love is way more important. We deal with rampant amounts of pornography addiction and internet abuse that way. And we've replaced our intimate dating relationships with platonic friendships, with pets, where we should be wanting kids, very, very intricate key societal changes that have happened to make marriage the opposite of the norm for our generation. So when I read this headline the other day, I was absolutely shocked, because if we're not getting married at higher rates, how could we possibly have better marriages than the people who came before us? And here's what the New York Post had to say. When you think about Gen Z, what is the first thing that comes to mind? Maybe it's their passion for activism, their strong sense of self, or maybe it's their penchant for confusing older generations with their bizarre, if not slightly unhinged phrases. What do you guys think is the most unhinged phrase for our generation? The drip, maybe? Chuggy, that's a big one. Cap is a really good one. Mountain lover. There's a lot of unhinged things that we all tend to say in our generation. What probably doesn't come to mind, and this is what I totally agreed with when I read the headline, is their strong marriages. Well, it turns out that is exactly one of the key things that this generation will be known for in the future, according to Tinder's new Future of Dating report. Interesting to me that a dating app put out this report, because you would think they would be anti-strong marriages because they're looking to have repeat customers. They don't want you to get married and delete your apps. They want you to continue coming back to their app. So fascinating. I don't know how much the methodology lines up here, but it's at least worth thinking about. The report, titled A Renaissance in Dating Driven by Authenticity, revealed 18 to 25-year-olds were drastically changing the dating game in a way that's going to have a major impact if and when they choose to get married. The data in the report comes from multiple surveys and studies conducted on thousands of people across Australia, the US, the UK, and Canada. Gen Z's focus on mental health and boundary setting will lay the foundation for them to have the most successful marriages yet. Personal development, emotional well-being, and clear communication in relationships, we love to hear that, we stand that, are priorities for Gen Z, which leads to stronger and healthier marriages, he said, as part of 5 predictions he made as part of the report. They are, however, less interested in marriage than previous generations, preferring to focus on creating fulfilling lives. So maybe that's an area where we can still choose to improve and still work to improve, making marriage more attractive and more interesting to our generation. But those of us who are interested in marriage are going to have stronger and healthier marriages than those who came before us. Brunson cited recent studies found within the last 3 years that marital satisfaction in Western countries is lower on average than it was 20 years ago. But on the other side of this, those in the top 20% of marriages today, I suppose the happiest marriages today, are more satisfied than at any other point in history. When they analyzed that data, they realized that the top 20% of marriages today utilize skills, learnings, and behaviors that we have now that we didn't have 20 years ago. Basically, couples who learn healthy behaviors and then embody that in their relationships typically have a higher satisfaction relationship. So that's kind of the premise that I used. He then compared this to the behaviors being displayed by Gen Z, branding them the healthiest dating generation ever, pointing to their focus on self-improvement, communication, boundary setting, therapy, and mental health. So it's for those reasons and many others, I think it's very clear that the data suggests Gen Z will have the strongest marriages or the strongest marital satisfaction rates. Right now, Gen Z is not dating at record levels. We aren't getting married at record levels in terms of the sheer number of people that aren't dating and aren't getting married. But don't for a second think that that is completely gone and extinct from society. I think the biggest work that we still have to do and the biggest room for improvement that we have in our external relationships, and most importantly our intimate dating relationships, is to make committed dating and marriage really attractive again to our generation. We are having to right now in real time undo generations of lies that have been told to our generation about how getting married ruins your life, about how you're always going to be tied down to the old ball and chain and you're never going to have fun or adventure or a personal life ever again if you get married, about how your career needs to take a back burner if you get married, that you shouldn't be sharing your money, etc., etc., etc. But in reality, we're finding out in real time that those of us choosing to get married are really, really happy. From a strictly all-female perspective, Christian, married, conservative women are statistically the happiest women by far and large in the United States today. So maybe it has more to do with undoing all of the lies of the previous generations for us to find out the truth for ourselves. That's the perfect first step in bringing that truth back to our generation. and back into the fold in real time. How about just finding purpose in general, looking for a bigger social responsibility than being obsessed with ourselves or obsessed with our own personal interests? Don't think purpose is important. Gen Zers do. A best-selling author wrote about this in a book called Emotional Intelligence, specifically about Gen Z. And I find this really interesting as it pertains to our corporate relationships and our jobs. A recent retail customer survey from Forrester found that 55% of Gen Zers indicates that a company's social responsibility reputation either influences or highly influences if they buy from them. In other words, if a company is aligning with our values and making that very known, we're a lot more likely to buy from them. And if they're doing all kinds of crazy wrong activism, we're the most likely generation to boycott those companies. Perhaps one of the reasons why organizations and groups like Public Square have absolutely blown up in the American job market and the economy in connecting people to businesses that share our values, like Nori and so many others that we know to be pro-life, pro-family, and pro-freedom in a time where most companies and most businesses don't align with our values. So that's absolutely fascinating. While millennials and Gen Z have long buoyed the purpose movement, the COVID-19 pandemic seems to have reignited this generation's understanding of their purchasing power. Surprisingly, when it comes to climate issues, lockdowns have made them more hopeful about how fast the planet can recover if we change our habits. In fact, about 2/3 of Gen Z and millennial shoppers want products with a sustainable footprint. I don't think that that's a partisan issue one bit. Me, as a red-blooded conservative American, am extremely concerned about waste, particularly plastic waste that's unbelievably unnecessary and ridiculous. Today, I ordered a lip balm from a very great sustainable company, but it happened to come through a third party, and it came in this giant box, like this big, for 2 tiny lip balm things, literally this size, which blew my mind. Amazon's the worst culprit of all of this. Not a partisan issue one bit, but we want companies that are going to have a more sustainable footprint. And we are willing to pay more if a product is sustainable. This generation is speaking up. They're the ones who will be raising children through the aftermath of our previous and current poor habits and decisions. But here's the thing. Gen Zers are also doing their research, looking closely at a company's actions in order to determine whether or not they are actually following through on their brand promise. They want transparency, not purpose washing. We don't want you to tell us that you care. We want you to show us that you care, even if it means we end up paying more for all of those things. The best performing companies identified a sense of purpose and mission as critical to engaging employees at a rate 53% higher than underperformers. So even in the jobs and the businesses that we work for and the businesses that we financially support with where we spend our money, we are very healthily looking at how they are impacting culture at large and our world at large. Johnny Diamond has a beautiful quote from one of my favorite saints, Mother Teresa, in our locals chat. We ourselves feel that what we are doing is just a drop in the ocean, but the ocean would be less because of that missing drop. Making a decision about where you spend your money and making a decision about what companies you support might seem like the tiniest thing, but for our generation, we understand that if all 70 million of us consciously make those decisions unitedly, that's when we can start to make a huge, huge difference. And what I really want to finish on, and the biggest reason to have faith for our generation, is just that, faith. I am told all the time that Gen Z is the most godless generation, that we only worship ourselves or we worship the entertainment industry instead of worshiping God, that we are a hopeless lost cause to be reached with the gospel, and we are completely beyond reproach, beyond repair, beyond anything when it comes to finding faith and religion and hope in something bigger than our broken world as we see it in front of us today. While it is true that America is dealing with record low rates of religious participation and record high rates of atheism, what I am seeing every single day with Generation Z is a revival and a resurgence of faith and religion unlike anything I have seen in my entire life as a 26-year-old here in America. Our generation realizes that our brokenness, our record societal levels of anxiety, of depression, of wanting to unalive ourselves, of substance abuse, of loneliness, of which we experience statistically the most loneliness of any demographic in our country. Those things are all there because we are trying to fit other things into a God-shaped hole in our hearts, and we've lost sight of the plot, but certainly lost sight of seeing other people as made in the image of God, which is why our humanity has just completely erased from itself. And unlike just finding faith and being interested in religion and being interested in answering these questions for ourselves, even beyond that, Gen Z is looking specifically for tradition with a capital T in our religious experiences. We are tired of being sold this half in, half out beige Christianity or cultural Christianity, where you show up to church and it looks a lot more like a secular rock concert than it does an opportunity to worship the creator of the universe. We are tired of gospels and messages and sermons from our preachers and our pastors being about the Taylor Swift tour or the Barbie movie and like trying to somehow tie it all back to what we're going through in our culture today. In reality, we're seeing the need in real time to make our world a little bit more like the next one, instead of trying to tailor our religion towards the culture of our very broken world. And it's one of the reasons that Gen Z as a generation, shockingly, is the most likely demographic of Christians in America to prefer the traditional Latin Mass, which is just about the most traditional, with a capital T, thing that a Christian could possibly prefer within the Catholic Church and our heritage as Christians, but even in Latin, like in the language that the church fathers were using at the very earliest time of Christianity. This was written in the National Catholic Register, and a 22-year-old named Virginia Abram wrote this as a blog post in August of 2021. 3 reasons why the Latin Mass is so attractive to young people. Joukowsky wrote that beauty will save the world, but in the short term, it may also save the Mass. I love this, and I wanted to read this with you. The traditional Latin Mass isn't just extraordinary in its form. Its attendance among 18 to 29-year-olds bucks the downward trends in religiosity among that demographic. Pew Research data shows that only around a quarter of Catholics between the age of 18 to 29 attend church once a week or more, compared to 98% of Latin Mass goers in the same demographic. So if people are going to church every single week, chances are, who are 18 to 29, chances are they're going to see a traditional Latin Mass, which is really interesting in the Catholic Church. The research also shows that young people's move towards tradition is largely self-motivated rather than the outcome of outside influence. We can see that personal preferences like reverence, curiosity, solemnity, and music account for 58% of the reason that people are going to seek out a Latin Mass, while peer influences like friends and spouses only accounted for 18% of the reason that people were going. Thus, to the tune of 76%, the impetus to attend Latin Mass among 18 to 39-year-olds seems to be largely coming internally from within our own generation rather than be inherited from previous generations. This girl says, for context, I wouldn't consider myself totally trad. While I have a growing love for the Latin Mass, the other type of Mass, the Novus Ordo, is always and will be my first liturgical language. I like to bounce around between reverent celebrations of the ordinary form, the extraordinary form, and even the Byzantine Rite when I can get it. But the common thread is that I think liturgy should be conducted in a manner fitting to the sacrifice that takes place on the altar. Like I said, not trying to make Christianity more like this world, but trying to make Christianity more like the mission of Jesus Christ and more like the next life that we are all going to, even if it seems weird or out of place or countercultural. I and just about every person my age I've talked to who attend TLM hold no animosity towards the Second Vatican Council. However, many of the liturgical reforms not intended by the council that were introduced in the 1970s to engage the youth, that was specifically why they sought these things out, have backfired. When the council gave an inch, the spirit of the age took a mile. Basically, every hymn ever written after 1968 are now like boomer and cringe, which I think is really, really funny. And obviously, if you are looking at this from a general Christian perspective, regardless of denomination, church attendance in Protestant Christian churches and evangelical Christian churches among Gen Z is wildly struggling right now, even though it's the fog machines and the drummer in the cage and like the really cool text Jesus to 77765 and everybody close your eyes. It won't feel awkward, but raise your hand at the end of church if you think that you found Jesus today, rather than creating a real sense of community, but closing your eyes and hiding it. I think this is so unbelievably interesting, right? Because it just goes to show not only are we seeking out purpose and meaning and faith in something very bigger and endless compared to our broken, finite, and self-obsessed narcissistic world, we're going all the way back. We're rejecting this era in totality. We're rejecting our older millennial cousins and friends and older neighbors, etc., and even our older siblings. We're rejecting our parents and how they worship in Gen X. We're rejecting the baby boomer movement of how we had the whole evangelical movement. We're going all the way back in tradition when it comes to the church with a capital T, to the traditional Latin Mass as how Gen Z is preferring to worship. Blows my mind. We are the generation of prove it to me. And I think that's a beautiful way to look at Gen Z. We are naturally skeptical. We don't just immediately buy into something because other people tell us to. We're not just going to sign up for a 4-year degree because people tell us we're going to be successful when we see that that's not how this is going to work out. We're not just going to climb the corporate ladder and prove loyalty to a company because that's the right thing to do when we could get a 15% raise every year jumping company to company, or just skip to the end of the line and be the CEO on day one by starting our own business. We're not going to understand that Zoom is the future, or all of this remote, lonely disconnection between one another is what we should be embracing, even though that's what corporate America is telling us. We're seeking out real community, and we want a sense of real tangible interaction with other people in our lives as a component, a major component in our mental and physical health. We're taking ownership of not just our physical activity and our nutrition, but our mental health too. And it's a beautiful reclaiming of the trajectory in which our generation is going, which ultimately leads back to embracing tradition with a capital T, but in a new Gen Z spun way. We are embracing traditional values, but having some fun with it along the way and charting our own course in a new uncharted territory that people haven't seen before in human history. And that's going to keep showing up in religion. That's going to keep showing up in politics. That's going to keep showing up in dating culture and our marriages and our health and everywhere in between, but only if our generation is given the opportunity to have a platform to share this with the world and to continue being inspired. The more we continue turning around and pointing the finger at Gen Z and saying, you are the reason our culture is so messed up, even though somebody else had to raise us, somebody else had to build all of these insane cultural norms that we would attribute to Gen Z today. The more we continue turning around and saying, we hate you, you are lazy, you are stupid, when we're starting our own businesses, we're taking ownership of our health and nutrition, we're going to trade school, we're starting families, we're being intentional with our marriages and our own personal health, that's going to keep harming the opportunity to see this movement grow and be multi-generational. The more we keep saying that this overwhelmingly independent political generation is super woke leftist, when that's really not true, in an attempt to own the libs, when in reality you're just limiting the opportunity to change people's minds, that's going to backfire and going to be really, really painful, when instead we could have an honest and civil discussion about why conservative ideas are more compassionate and are better and should be embraced more, even from an independent perspective, rather than trying to convince us all to become Republicans. The entire message that I want you to take away from this stream is this: Gen Z is not the enemy. We are not idiots. We are not uneducated. In fact, we have the most higher education of any generation in human history, and we have all of the information in the history of the world at our fingertips at any given moment. We are not selfish or self-obsessed or narcissistic. In fact, most of our decisions, from the clothing that we buy to the jobs that we take to the majors that we choose in school, have everything to do with empathy for other people and trying to make the world a better place, which sadly the left takes a lot more advantage of than the right, and misleads our generation in what true empathy is supposed to look like and what true compassion is supposed to look like. We are not a universally faithless generation, atheist generation, or agnostic generation. In fact, we are seeking meaning and purpose, and we are seeking faith in something bigger than our broken world, including in the most traditional ways to worship Jesus, period, ever before. And I love seeing that as our world continues to go away from religion and away from faith, that we are reclaiming that for ourselves. Don't write us off just yet. We are just now coming into adulthood. Again, I'm the first year of Gen Z, according to how most people cut this up. Some people started at 1995. I was born in 1997. So I'm 26. I just turned 26. I'm the first year of Gen Z, and we go all the way down to about 12, 13 years old today. So the vast majority of the 70 million people that are lumped in our generation still have yet to even finish high school and go through college and figure out who they are going to be. We cannot risk alienating soon to be the largest cultural and voting demographic in the United States of America by trying to shut us down, by trying to call us stupid, by trying to own us on social media, instead of inspiring and uplifting and encouraging us if we are serious about seeing freedom be brought forward into the next generation. I will say this again. I've said it a million times before. If we alienate Gen Z, the Western Hemisphere, Western culture, Western civilization, you can kiss it goodbye within the next 10 years. If you continue alienating our generation, you can say goodbye to all of the things that we love and that have set Western civilization apart throughout the rest of human history, throughout the past, but certainly going forward into the rest of human history. GKU, I love what you just said. And Alex, thank you so much for your tip in our locals chat. We love it. You said she looks for the positives, and that's good. Gen Z is a diverse group, probably more so than any. We have an opportunity to look for the negative, and we have the opportunity to look for the positive all the time. Instead of looking at the few insane woke TikToks that get shared by libs of TikTok, who's great. I love her. She does unbelievably amazing work. But instead of looking at that as the monolith for what every single one of us 70 million people believe, behave, and buy into, what if we looked at Gen Z as an opportunity? What if those who came before us saw our entrepreneurial spirit, our drive to find faith and religion, our hope for stronger marriages and our rejection of hookup culture, our interest in holistic health, in nutrition, in working out, in our mental health? What if we saw that as an opportunity to actually restart American culture, but for the better? Because the truth is this, and this is what I'll leave you with. Most people that I have found and come across on television and radio, a lot of people in politics, love to tell me over and over again that Gen Z is destroying America. Gen Z is the end of all that we believe to be good and true and beautiful, and your generation is screwing the pooch on it all, which obviously could not be true. Most of us are still preteens and teenagers, and who's really running the country? I'm just saying. But even if that were true, even if Gen Z was changing fundamentally everything about what it meant to live in the United States of America in the 2020s, I want to ask you this. Are you happy and are you proud with where our current culture is? Are you happy with it in America? Are you happy with hookup culture? Are you happy with lab-grown meat? Are you happy with an economy that makes it fundamentally impossible for young families to buy a home and provide for one another? Are you happy with a culture that's rejecting God and openly mocking God in society in every single way possible? In every music video, every television program, every political speech, etc. Are you happy with the same people being in Washington, D.C. for longer than twice the time we've been alive, failing to accomplish anything because they would be out of a job if they did? They would have nothing to run on 2 years or 4 years or 6 years from now. Are you happy with a culture that wants you to be a forever customer of the pharmaceutical industry instead of embracing preventative health and holistic health? Are you happy with a culture telling you that we should start turning off the electricity grid to save the earth But all of the same people telling you that are getting on private jets to Davos and have the biggest carbon footprint on the face of the planet. Are you happy with any of that? Are you happy with a culture where 1/3 of our generation isn't here because of abortion alone? I'm not. I'm not okay with a culture that tells a young woman that she should only ever want her career come hell or high water, and she should kill her child in order to make that happen. I am not okay with a culture that tells a 12-year-old girl the only way she's ever going to be happy is if she experiences genital mutilation surgery and starts taking testosterone provided to her by her school nurse or Planned Parenthood, because that's when she's going to love herself, rendering her infertile and mutilated for the rest of her life. I'm not okay with any of that. So if Gen Z really is changing culture and changing America, maybe that's a good thing. Maybe the end of life as we know it actually means getting back to traditional values, because life as we know it, newsflash, kind of sucks. Not even kind of, it does suck. No one's happy. No one's fulfilled. No one has a sense of purpose, but we could. We could if we were willing to try something different, which is exactly what our generation believes in, promotes, and is working towards every single day. Don't write us off. Don't assume that we're buying into the lies of those currently in power. We're not. We're rejecting them. And maybe if we have the opportunity for an honest conversation, for a civil conversation with our generation, for platforming young people instead of looking at them as stupid, we have an opportunity to save this crazy great experiment called America that I don't know is going to survive for the rest of time. But damn it, I'm going to give it a fighting chance. All right, you guys, I love you so very much. I would love to see you join us over on Locals for our post-stream Q&A. I am dropping the link right now in our live chat. We would love to see you guys join us over there. Lots of really fun announcements coming in the next few days. Be good people. Tell the truth. Go check out Nori, and don't forget to use code Isabel20 if you guys order any of their products. Their Stay Well product, absolutely amazing, especially if you guys travel a lot or you're getting the cold right now that everybody is getting. Could not recommend them enough. We'll see you over on Locals in just a second. Before you go, do me a huge favor, smash that follow or subscribe button on whatever platform you are watching on right now. You guys are the best. Love you. See you tomorrow at 3 p.m. Eastern. Locals, don't go anywhere.